Hello and welcome to Book Solve, and this, which is my 19th video in my As I Read 2025 series, and this video covers another one of my Kindle reads, but for the first time it features a non-fiction book, and I do throw in, to add a little salt, a non-fiction book in my reading every now and then. This time, sometimes it's a science book, sometimes it can be all kinds of subjects, really. I always like listening to or reading people who know about their subject. Anyway, this one is called Autocracy, Inc. By Anne Applebaum. So I guess, as the book is essentially an extended political essay, if you've got something against bringing politics in, then this probably isn't the video for you. I'm of the opposite opinion. Everything is politics in the end, and it's a really important subject. Anyway, this book, Autocracy, Inc., warns of the dangers ahead for democracy due to the increasing commercial commerce of the West with authoritarian regimes, and how, rather than there being a benefit in opening up new markets, the downside is far more evident. The degradation and destruction of democratic controls by self-serving actions of autocratic leaders and a corrupt super-rich elite who wish to evade the obligations of ethics, and both of whom consider themselves above law and morality. And I think that's a really important subject, and one we should take on board and teach ourselves, educate ourselves about it, because it is happening. I read Anne Applebaum's previous book, which is this one, Twilight of Democracy, and in this she took aim at liberalism's challenges in the West, particularly populist demagogues on the right side of the political spectrum. But in this book, Autocracy, Inc., she turns her attention to its chief enemies elsewhere, the world's authoritarian regimes. And she argues that, unlike in the last century when dictatorships formed ideological blocs, today's autocracies, countries like Russia, China, Iran, Venezuela, and so on, are less easily defined and categorized, and they're not drawn along ideological lines anymore. And instead, Applebaum argues that their elites share a determination to preserve their wealth and power, and are thus not united by ideals, political ideals, but just by deals. Hence, Autocracy, Inc. The book was written and published before Trump began his second term, and it came out in the mid-2024, during the final months of the Biden administration in America. And of course, we now find that Trump has incontrovertibly undertaking a complete dismantling of democracy in the USA and enforcing an autocracy, ruled just by him alone. He calculates that can keep him out of prison, carry on evading the justice that his heinous and obscene crimes deserve, and allow him to continue to swindle and feed his insatiable appetite for admiration and self-admiration, really. Incredibly narcissist. Anyway, this book, Autocracy, Inc., is a stark warning and an astute analysis of how this came about and how it's happened. Ultimately, Anne Applebaum says that all autocrats dream of getting the post-1945 international order, gutting, not getting, gutting the post-1945 international order in order to make the world safer for themselves. There was a great, I think, optimism, certainly in the UK, after World War II, a big move in social welfare, in making sure that future generations would not suffer another world war. This was a target. But now we have these autocrats believing that the only thing that matters is themselves. And this is as true of Trump as it is of Putin or any other tyrant. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, neoliberals assumed that the West would get new markets and the East would get democracy. But globalization hasn't worked like that. Instead, powered by new technologies, autocracies have spread their illiberal ideas, while the West has become dependent on the likes of Chinese manufacturing and Russian oil, and has hobbled its ability to assert itself, enabled by the opacity of global finance. Ruthless regimes have got richer, and by engaging in their own trade in surveillance technologies, weapons and precious minerals. And many in the West have got rich too by helping kleptocrats from mafia states to secrete their ill-gotten gains. These last thoughts are something I've picked up from elsewhere. They're not my particular thoughts, although I actually agree with them. I would level some criticisms about the book, though. Applebaum fails to criticise America and my country, the UK, in pursuing military actions in Iraq and Libya, as well as our unfailing support of Israel, its illegal occupation of Palestine, and Netanyahu's genocide against the Palestinian people. All these do not figure in her account, and yet these incursions provide ample fuel for anti-Western feeling and significantly undermine any moral authority the West has to criticise other nations' military ventures. So the Russian invasion in Ukraine has prolonged because the West didn't immediately come to the aid of protecting Ukrainian borders, and Trump has, until very late, done all in his power to block supply of military hardware to the region, promising he's going to do it, and then blocking it actually happening. Even at one time hoping to do a deal with Putin to carve up the Ukraine and establish mining rights for the USA in order to procure essential rare earth minerals that are so crucial to modern technology. And most of this weak response to Russian expansionism is because the West, and Europe in particular, is beholden to Russia for energy supplies. And this must cause huge concern to the Baltic states, to Moldova, to other countries on the Russian borders, Finland, Poland. Anyway, the thing that really annoys is, I think, that the power of illiberal ideas to engage and incite the uneducated is frightening. The MAGA is a malignant force of ignorance and denial. And under the auspices of Trump, the current US health official, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., undermines vaccine science, for instance, and consequently kills people, including children. And here in the UK, even incompetent, pathetic, inadequate and transparent grifters like Nigel Farage begin to get some political traction. And all this is supported by a populist media that's fully in control of indolent, far-right, elitist multimillionaires who serve only their own interests and have got, apparently, zero moral scruples. I mean, in the end, Trump is merely a useful tool for the purpose of dismantling democracy and avoiding justice, consequences, and responsibility. Hiding depravity and corruption behind superwealth is something you can do, and as Anne Applebaum points out, Autocracy Inc. looks to maintain that state of affairs in perpetuity. Applebaum's book argues that autocrats today operate through global kleptocratic networks with financial elites, troll farms, and state-linked firms collaborating across borders. And these regimes aim to erode democratic norms by instilling apathy and confusion, making populations doubt the efficacy or value of political participation. Disinformation isn't just false content. It's a strategy to undermine truth itself, making shared reality harder to maintain. And the threat to democracy is both insidious and invidious. It develops subtly, gradually, and often unnoticed until it's deeply entrenched. Applebaum emphasises how autocrats and their enablers undermine institutions from within, through the courts, through elections and the media, normalising corrupt or authoritarian behaviour and exploiting dramatic tools, like free speech, to attack democracy itself. Usually it is a slow corrosion, masters legal reform or populist grievance. But under Trump, it is by shock tactics, as he employs overwhelming smokescreens that scattergun nonsense to confuse and distract. Autocrats stoke us versus them narratives. They exploit ethnic, cultural, and ideological divisions, use disinformation to poison public trust. And their aim isn't just power, it's to discredit democracy so that people no longer believe in fairness, truth, or civic solidarity. And this is Trump's objective. This is where he's taking the United States of America. And currently, the rest of the liberal democratic world is meekly following along. I think you'd learn a lot more about this subject by reading Autocracy Inc. But alas, it provides no simple solutions. The road to recovery of this is hard, laborious, unrewarding. But in the light of hope, love, empathy, compassion, truth, and justice, that light is not entirely extinguished, and we must keep our eye firmly focused on its frail flame. Anyway, that's my review and rant, I suppose, about Anne Applebaum's non-fiction book, Autocracy Inc. So from me, it's cheerio from Booksolve, and I'll see you again soon. Cheerio, bye-bye.